Alrighty. Hi, everyone. So I'm Braden, CEO of Voiceflow. Has anyone used Voiceflow before here? Maybe hand up. No? Oh, we got one. There we go. So Voiceflow is a framework we launched in 2019 to build AI agents. In the past, chatbots, but these days, much more focused on agents and things like that. And so, honestly, when was asked to do the talk, I wasn't sure exactly what to talk about because a lot of the previous talks are pretty cool. They're touching Web3. We are decidedly a Web2 company. And so I was trying to figure out what exactly to talk about. And I figured the area of expertise that we have is actually how are big companies thinking about building AI agents. And so that's what I was going to focus on today. It's not going to be nearly as technical. It's just going to be kind of a framework for everyone to think through. Cool. A little bit about Voiceflow, so you know how we're, kind of where we're coming from. Started 2019, 2,000 customers, 250,000 users. Super old and not Web3 is the important line at the top there. So I'm going to actually ask the group here, what is an agent? Yeah.
I would say it's like, I was talking about this, the wrapper companies where you have like smart ass friends, ask them a question, they answer. An agent is someone you ask them to complete a task.
Yeah.
They have the insight and ability to complete it.
So task-oriented bot.
Outcome more than just an answer.
Yeah, and then you had your hand up.
Yeah, it acts on your behalf to accomplish your goals, like for example, dating concierge. Whenever we have it, I would love to use it.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
So I think agent has a goal, a backstory, and a set of tasks.
Yep.
And then the interactions behind it. So I think to me, it's like a class in C++, and an interaction like an API that you define.
Yeah. So this is how we think about agents at Voiceflow. Autonomous systems able to take commands and output action. So very similar. We're all kind of thinking the same way. I just want to bring this up, bring up a definition at the beginning, because I hear so many different terms for agents these days. Sometimes it's just chatbot plus. And so wanted to bring that up. Agents can or don't always have to use tools in order to achieve their goals. They can make decisions to achieve their goals, and they can also break down complex tasks into smaller tasks to achieve their goals. So they're very much like a function. Who here's used an agent today? Who here's used a good agent today? One where they were, okay. You're from Valerie. I feel like I shouldn't. Valerie's a good agent. Yeah. How was it? Yeah, the good agent. Like, what made it good?
What made it good?
Yeah.
Context.
Context. What type of user experience was it?
It's interactive. So it's about transparency.
Yeah.
About how the agent has got to what it's doing.
Yeah. So a lot of agents, I did see some hands go down, as I said, who's used the agent today. Often agents are, they work 90% of the time, right? And they're really magical when they do work. It's the 10% of the time where often a lot of businesses, like we work with a very large bank. We work with, I don't know if I'm allowed to say. We work with a very large bank. And I remember I was chatting with the VP once, and they said, we want it to be perfect every single time. We want to use LLMs. And they go, can we just basically like almost hand write what the bot's going to say? And I was like, what's the point? But that's often how a lot of enterprises are thinking. It's very similar to self-driving. The technology works 90% of the time, and it's magical. It's that last 10% of the time, especially for critical use cases like FinServe, healthcare, where it gets really challenging to put these into production. What do enterprises care about? I'll just jump to the punchline. Not getting fired by their boss, and more importantly, their customers, right? Privacy, again, if you're in healthcare and you say the wrong thing, you have a lot of liability on your hands. And so the phrase that we've thought a lot about is you can only automate what you can control. And so when it comes to building agents in an enterprise setting, it's often about observability is really the key. It's not just about being able to go from A to D. That's what makes a really cool demo. It's about being able to show how the agent went from A to B to C, and then being able to layer intelligent systems on top to automate how fast you can create A to D, but you need to have that observability. If you don't have observability, you're not going to be able to sell into a critical use case. VC demos, like A to D is great though. And so, yeah, if you want to sell not just capability. Let's talk a little bit about, and you can tell I made a lot of these slides today. Let's talk about a Starbucks barista as an agent, and a very simple little framework to think about. Again, observability requires us to go down to the atomic level. What are like the lowest level things that our agent is working with? We have knowledge, right? Often this is going to be a vector DB these days, a knowledge base. People are using RAG for stuff like this. We have actions, like what's our rule book? A good example of this is you might hire an incredibly, smart person to be a Starbucks barista, but they might have a PhD in astrophysics. They will not know how to be a Starbucks barista on day one. It doesn't matter how smart they are. You need to be able to give them knowledge, right? How do you actually process a refund at Starbucks? Do any of us know? I don't know. I've never worked at Starbucks. So being able to have actions in a rule book. And then lastly is the tools. And also tool permissioning as well. How do you make sure that the Starbucks barista is not able to issue a refund to a customer who has not made a purchase? We get this a lot at Voiceflow, people asking for refunds for things they haven't bought. And so as we go up the layer, this is your agent, the barista. I totally forgot a quote mark there. That's annoying me now. And then at the very top is actually feedback and the supervisor. All of us are the supervisors. In a world of building AI agents, and especially for business use cases, we are all at that high level trying to provide feedback to make these systems better over time. And so, as models get better, rules in the playbook are going to be less verbose. Today, as the models are, they're not, they can be dumb sometimes, right? They're both the most incredible technology you've ever used. First time you ever used ChatGPT, it was magical. And then other times it makes incredibly dumb mistakes. Today, you have to be very verbose with AI agents. You have to be able to say, hey, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I think as the models get better, you'll have to be less verbose. It's the same thing as, any startup founders in the room? Hands up, maybe. When you hire someone like really great, they just get it, right? They're onboarding faster. I think the models, as they've gotten better, are able to be less verbose as well. With that, okay, so I wanted to actually show what we do in Voiceflow and how we think about this. Now, the first thing I want to prime you for is it's going to look very deterministic at first because we're so focused on observability. Like that is the number one thing we are focused on is observability at scale, being able to show every possible thing that could happen, and then over time you're trying to layer other things on. Actually, any questions about what I've talked about now before I quickly show it off? Yeah.
Is cost also access?
On, what do you mean?
So when you do observability and do several LLMs, as you do this at scale, cost starts to become a factor in this, right?
Yeah, actually, so it's a good question. So yeah, cost is a huge factor. So we have a popular method that we see a lot of our customers do is they'll use a pretty expensive model that's good, like a GPT-4o or something like that, to do a first pass. Let's say like a RAG response. Then they'll pass the response to a cheaper model, and then they'll actually pass the same chunks that the RAG passed back and say, hey, was any new information provided in the response from model 1? They'll then ask model 2, which is a cheaper model, maybe like a Claude model or something like that, to just do a bit of a gut check, trying to reduce hallucinations. And so we see customers do cycles of stuff like this, where it's going to be more expensive, but per response, it'll be a little bit more accurate, have less hallucinations and things like that. And again, that chain of prompting also gives the enterprises confidence that they're doing those checks and they're going to have a lower cost, lower hallucination, which is going to justify the cost. Now, that's going to be in FinServ often. I see FinServ is the industry that's innovating most right now. Healthcare is a lot further back, just for obvious reasons. Like the consequences are infinitely higher. Yeah. Any other questions before we jump in? I just want to quickly show what the product looks like. I was only slotted 10 minutes, and I wasn't sure exactly what to talk about, given the other chats were much more in depth. So, oh yeah, go ahead.
What is the most interesting system or workflow you have seen to kind of decide what tasks to give to more expensive API calls, and I have to do like 4.0, 3.5?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of agents, a lot of agent frameworks at the highest level are still essentially a routing function and then a bunch of like playbooks, right? And I'm speaking in very just high level terms here. You can have different playbooks that are going to use different models. So for example, on something that is going to be like, we have an auto customer who's doing like a car manual. for things that are like basically like you can talk to your car, right? Using like the infotainment system. For questions that are going to be a little bit less important and like potentially lower risk, you can actually use just cheaper models and do less checks and things for hallucinations. So in that routing function, basically when the utterance comes in from the user, you use like an NLU model, you can use LLM model, whatever it is to actually do inference on like where are we going to route this request. So we're going to route it to this playbook, to this playbook, to this playbook. Eventually over time, I think you're going to see large language models do much more of the routing entirely themselves without any sort of like intermediary routing layer. But I think right now you're still seeing a lot of like routing models get used essentially to pass it over. And then on things that are a little bit more sensitive, that's where they'll have like lots of hallucination checks, like more expensive models, stuff like that.
It's an interesting answer, but my question was different. Like
Oh.
when agents are handling super complex tasks,
Yeah.
and then they have to decide, like at this level, like I always say, agents eventually going to replicate the hierarchy of companies.
Yeah.
You're going to have a few top level CXOs, which are the most advanced, most expensive.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have middle management, GPT-4 right now.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have a lot of like blue collar 3.5, you give them more time to
Yep.
do processing at cheap,
Yep.
which with time they could significantly improve their. So do you see anyone doing that modeling and deciding what task to assign at each level? How do you break it down?
No. I mean, it's a similar philosophy to what I just talked about with the routing, but I think you're talking about it at a much higher level.
And it's like when you need all of them involved, but how to decide what to assign at what level?
Yeah, most companies, candidly, there's like kind of been four like levels of conversational AI now. Like there's DTMF, which is like when you call like a call, when you call like a call center, like press 1, press 2. A lot of companies are still on that and trying to migrate to NLU, let alone going from NLU to LLMs, let alone going from LLMs to like more like agents and things like that. So most big companies that we see and work with are like stuck between like step 2 and 3 and thinking about 4, let alone truly having like autonomous agents.
Do you see that being the future of agents?
I
You're gonna have like a group of agents working together and like delegating tasks based on their costs.
Yeah, so how I think about agents is I think of them like functions and internal tools. When it comes to like being able to create their own hierarchy and passing amongst each other, I think we'll get there. But I think it's going to take some time. I think they're going to look a lot more like APIs within an organization, where instead of each API doing like a very discrete task, it's going to be able to take an input, give it a goal, and then like pass out a completed task. So I think
I think they're doing it already.
not at the enterprise level. That's more. I think SMBs and startups and stuff are doing some really, really cool stuff, and you're seeing a lot of smaller companies now where they can be like way fewer employees. Like customer support's completely just being automated all over the place, right? Customer support, internal task onboarding.
Any operations, I see every step of operation.
Yeah. I think I probably do. I have time to do a demo? I don't know now.
Do it.
Okay, I'll show really quickly what this looks like. I'm totally going to sit next to you here as well. Okay. So I'm going to show what Voiceflow looks like really quick here. So you guys will see the framework. Everything here is about observability. So if we go into, we have a bunch of different workspaces where you can actually create different agents and things like that. We have a bunch of things running. So we have a Discord bot that's actually moderating our Discord community. So a good example of this is going to be in here. You'll see we have about 10,000 developers in here. If someone was to ask a question, this is not an agent. This is like just a very simple like RAG application. I am, let's see here. Okay, that one doesn't have an answer. It won't answer if it doesn't have a high enough confidence. It'll see unable to edit work in Voiceflow. This person answers a thing. Bot's able to go ahead and actually just post a question. We used to have this autonomously running in like the general channel. Only challenge is it was just burning money because a lot of things like weren't actually questions, or there were repeat questions and things like that. So that would be an example of a bot being built. If we actually open up this bot here, this is what Voiceflow's like what we would call agent management system looks like. So these are all the workflows. These are again the playbooks. Think of this like the employee manual of what your bot can actually do. So we have account downgrades, the ability to exit assistant, feature requests, stuff like that. Top left, we have the knowledge. So I've got a couple, there's me, there's my birthday. I can add in my different knowledge sources and stuff. I can preview the answers, test it out against different models, whether it's GPT-4, some of the Claude models, et cetera. Play around with the instructions, the prompt wrapper, all that kind of stuff. So this is the highest level. Now, where Voiceflow gets really fun is in the business logic. So let's actually go into like account. Let's go into account downgrades, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
This business logic, was it defined by AI, like clustered, or like you defined some logic into it? How was it?
Yeah. So most of this is just defined by our team. So what's a good example here? You'll see it's not really conversation logic. It's going to be, okay, user wants to downgrade. We're actually just going to run some code here. We're then going to go ahead and actually check our Zendesk. We're going to see if they're a customer. We're going to ping our analytics server, and then in this case, we're saying customer support rep is going to go ahead and downgrade. Cool. So that would be an example of a workflow. Now, the agent will actually just run through this, essentially. What matters is each playbook that that the agent decides to run, like that's where the human is going to put in what's specific to your business. But the goal is over time, the agents are choosing which playbook do I want to run at which time, and then the playbooks are eventually, haven't done this yet. The playbooks are getting better and better over time as you see where conversations are messing up, et cetera. So feature requests, a lot of business logic, general content search, even checking your internet speed. These are all kind of the actions you can take. You'll notice a lot of these things are reusable components. So for example, like an analytics component here, very simple. It just hits our analytics API, get some JavaScript in there, and we can just plop that everywhere in our agent. And so as we go back here, if we go back to our agent management system, here are all the functions. These are the actual integrations that the agent can make. So these are going to be like API calls and things. So if you want to hit Perplexity, great. Here are the inputs, here are the outputs, the keys. And then what's really nice is then the agent has kind of everything it needs. You add the description for what this function actually does. So this is very similar to like, how you do functions like GPTs or whatever. But you can actually go ahead and build these for your own internal APIs and things, which a lot of enterprises find quite useful. And then lastly is NLU model. Why this is useful is when it comes to actually routing, where you want to go for an agent, it's really expensive if you were to pass in the entire model into an LLM prompt. Here's the 400 things you could route from. So what we actually did was we took an approach where we use a really thin NLU model trained per project, and it spins it up in a couple seconds. The utterance comes in, it returns the top 5 intents, passes those intents to the LLM model, which then allows it to actually have the benefit of the power of an LLM, which is a little bit better understanding semantics and subtle nuances, but also the scale of an NLU, which is what allows you to also be able to route at a better cost. And so it's a pretty cool approach. So that's in Voiceflow. What happens is utterance comes in, NLU determines top 5 out of 1,000 different things it could do, passes it to LLM, LLM then passes the appropriate playbook or knowledge, gives the answer. That's one conversation turn. So yeah, that's how the system works. It's all free to sign up. You can try it out, rip it apart. And our whole goal is to have everything centralized, all the knowledge, the playbooks, everything, so that you have total observability, and then over time layer on more and more autonomy on top. That's it. That's Voiceflow. Sorry, I went over on time, but thank you.